So last week, the big story provincially, of course, was the fact of a draft constitution announced by the Justice Minister. That, of course, is Simon Jolin Barrette. Called something that would protect Quebec's core values like secularism, gender equality, and the French language, the regular stuff you've expected to hear from this government. But one of the other things mentioned in that particular, now remember, this is just a draft bill for the time being, but the legislation, when it becomes that, would forbid organizations that get public funding, such as school boards, from using that money to pay for court challenges of laws deemed to protect, quote, the fundamental characteristics of Quebec, unquote. Well, of course, one of those challenges now, Bills 96, Bill 21, came from and now are coming from Quebec, from EMSB, the English Montreal School Board. Joe Ortona is chair of the EMSB. He's also president of the Quebec English School Boards Association. He's on the line. Hey, Joe, thanks for being here this afternoon. If you would, give me your reaction to, now this came out at the end of last week, when you saw this, what'd you think?
It surprised even me, something like this. I mean, how could you bar anybody from challenging any law on constitutional grounds? We're talking about constitutional challenges, which means that essentially the argument being made is that they violate people's rights, their constitutional rights that are supposed to be protected. It's essentially the government saying, look, we want to rig the game in our favor. These guys are beating us in court all the time, and so we're just going to pass a law that says that they can't take us to court because we keep losing, and it frustrates us.
By the way, when you talk about taking a court, just to explain, so you challenged Bill 21, right? You challenged Bill 40, I guess, which was the idea of school boards and the system that's set up on the French side. You won those challenges, but to a point, right? Where are we on Bill 40 right now?
Well, on Bill 40, we won on virtually every argument that we raised. And that was upheld by the Court of Appeal. And the government, again, is being very stubborn. And ironically, they are using public money to appeal the wins that we get and are doing it again. And they've requested permission to have the appeal heard at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not yet decided if that appeal is going to be heard or not.
But so for people, by the way, just to bring everyone up to date, because this goes back a while, this Bill 40, this challenges the rights of the English Montreal's or English school boards to control their own boards, right? That the basic explanation?
Well, they wanted to abolish the school boards, right? And that would have made it very easier. They wouldn't have needed a provision like this one that they're trying to pass through the back door to block us from challenging legislation, because school boards wouldn't have existed. So, essentially, what they were trying to do it the easy way, and they were hoping that we weren't going to fight back, and they were hoping that nobody was going to notice. But they were going to have full autonomy to run the school boards as they saw fit. And as you can see on the French side, that has turned to be a colossal failure.
Right. So on the French side, what we call basically service centers that the government runs. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm curious, when you say a complete failure in what sense?
Well, they're not accountable to anybody in the community. When parents have complaints, they have nobody to go to, because essentially the people running the service centers there are unelected. They are completely under the control and authority of the Ministry of Education. They make all the decisions there. They run the day-to-day. Now the directors general of the school service centers are now directly hired by the government of Quebec. So they have total control over what's going on there. There is actually no local considerations when it comes to decision making. There's no understanding of what the local needs are, what the needs of the community are. It's all centralized at Quebec City.
All right. So with respect to this idea of no public challenge, you already have a case now heading to the Supreme Court challenging, Bill 96. What happens going forward?
Well, my reading of the law, of the bill, is this would be for new challenges going forward. But then again, you never know, right? They could amend this at the last minute, and they might try to make it retroactive. The fact of the matter is, they're trying to rig the game in their favor. This is essentially like the adults playing children, where they don't like losing, so they say, I'm picking up the ball and I'm going home. And so nobody's going to play if I can't win. The problem is that the ball doesn't belong to Simon Jolin Barrette. The Constitution provides rights for everyone. And, we can't try to rig the game that way. The fact of the matter is this would never stand up in court. How could a court decide? School boards are constitutionally protected, but if you violate the rights of the school boards don't have a recourse. Mm-hmm. It's never going to fly.
Okay, I'm trying to imagine then, to your point about obviously things can change between now and the time this does become law, and is likely to become law, I guess, at some point this year. Does it change if you're allowed to follow through on this and it ends up in the court and there's a decision? Does that give the government, from your understanding, Joe, the reason or the right to say simply we'll ignore the decision?
Well, no. The court decisions are binding, including on the government of Quebec. Section 23 rights that exist in the Canadian Charter cannot be ignored. They cannot be overridden either by invoking the notwithstanding clause. Mm-hmm. Governments are bound by those decisions. And so, they may not like it, but this is the constitutional framework that makes up Canada. And Quebec can have its own constitution, but that constitution cannot be inconsistent with the Canadian Constitution. The Canadian Constitution always prevails. Simon Jolin Barrette, in his press conference, admitted as much.
Okay. So if I'm trying to just play this out a little bit, if going forward, there's no public challenge, so let's say they come up with another bill, but you can do this privately. I'm not even sure I know what that means, privately. Me as an individual, if I can raise the millions of dollars necessary to challenge something like this, I can do it. Is that what you took from this?
Right. So they're not barring private citizens from challenging, but most of the time when a millionaire's rights or someone ultra rich his rights are being violated, they already have the recourse to be able to challenge. Most of the people who have difficulty challenging are those who don't have those means to be able to pay. And you're disadvantaging them even further. You think of institutions, for example, it's not just the EMSB. You think of institutions like CAQ. Well, CAQ also gets public money. So basically every organization that stands up for human rights would not be able to challenge when human rights are violated. I mean, what kind of a constitutional principle is that? All
right. Let me just shift, if I can, before I run out of time. You were at the debate at the Siegel Center on Thursday night with the three main mayoral candidates. You want to give me your assessment? And what in this, by the way, would affect schools, English school boards, et cetera?
Well, so my assessment, I thought all of them did okay. I didn't think anybody shined really or did exceptionally or exceeded expectations. To be honest, I think if people's minds are already made up, I don't think any of the candidates were able to sway anyone. And I personally believe if there were any undecideds that listened to that debate, they're probably still undecided now, which is okay because there's still a couple of weeks left in this election, so they have time to make up their mind.
Any policies from any of the parties that necessarily might affect, schools, English schools, anything like that you're aware of?
Well, there's always, they always put out promises about making the streets safer for kids who walk to school and making the areas around schools safe by lowering the speed limit and putting measures in place like that. Whoever gets elected, whenever it comes to children's safety, we're always going to be able to work with anybody in a collegial and cordial manner.
I just want to follow up on that. It's interesting. I brought this up the other day over a story, Quebec, something to do with transport, suggesting that, we need to do a better job, certainly in school zones. I have seen other jurisdictions, Joe, do a much, much better job than what we do here when people are dropping off or picking up kids, and I'm sure you've seen these as well. You have any idea why we have not gone ahead and done things? I know we've talked about it, but haven't really done much about it?
It's a great question. Certainly something that we should probably be taking a look at. a lot of our schools are in residential neighborhoods, and so when we talk about reconfiguring the streets, I know that sometimes it may not be the case every time, but often there's pushback from the people who live on the street or next to it because they don't want their street to be a one-way, for example, or they don't want parking spaces removed. I'm not sure, but the street does belong to everyone, and everyone has to use it. But pedestrians are the ones who are the most vulnerable on the street, especially when we're talking about children. Yeah. So their safety should come before minor inconveniences of everybody else.
Joe, appreciate the time. Always do. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.